Welcome, dear listeners, to another descent into the shadows. You've tuned into the shadow behind you, where the veil between the living and the forgotten thins just enough for us to peer through. I am your guide through these murky realms, the one who whispers the tales that history tried to bury under layers of soil and silence. Tonight, we venture into the jagged heart of the Ozark Mountains, that ancient labyrinth of mist, shrouded peaks and whispering hollows, where the earth itself seems to hold its breath, waiting for something or someone to stir. Imagine, if you will, the year 1866. The Civil War has just clawed its way to a ragged end, leaving the land scarred and the people hollowed out like gutted pumpkins. In the Ozarks, a region straddling Missouri and Arkansas, the air still reeks of gunpowder and regret. Families huddle in log cabins perched on rocky slopes, their lanterns flickering against the encroaching night like feeble wards against the unknown. The war brought death in droves, bushwhackers ambushing from the underbrush, families torn asunder by loyalties divided like the Union itself. But in the aftermath, something darker lingered. Not just the ghosts of soldiers, mind you, but whispers of things that defied the grave altogether. It was in this fragile peace that the boy appeared. They called him Elias, no last name, no lineage that anyone could trace. He wandered out of the deep woods one autumn dusk, his bare feet caked in mud, his eyes wide and unblinking like polished obsidian. The folks of a small settlement near the White River, a cluster of homesteads known then as Hollow's Bend, found him collapsed by the creek, muttering words that twisted the air around him. At first they thought him a war orphan, one of the countless children left adrift by the conflict. But soon, oh so soon, they realized he was something else entirely, something that made the stoutest hearts quail and the devout cross themselves thrice. Picture the scene. The sun dips low, painting the ridges in blood-red hues. Leaves crunch underfoot like brittle bones. The boy no more than 12, with hair like tangled briars and skin pale as moonlit fog, doesn't cry or beg for food. Instead, he stares with eyes that seem to pull the light from the world. When the miller's wife, a kindly soul named Martha Gaines, approaches to offer him bread, he speaks. Not in English, not at first. A guttural tongue, ancient and foul, spills from his lips, and the bread in her hand withers to mold before her eyes. She drops it, screaming, as crows gather overhead, their caws mocking her terror. Word spreads like wildfire through dry brush. The boy is taken in by the local preacher, Reverend Harlan Thorpe, a man hardened by battlefield sermons and the loss of his own son to Confederate lead. Thorpe sees salvation in the child, a chance to mend the war's wounds through charity. But that first night, as the Reverend reads from his Bible by candlelight, the flames dance unnaturally, casting shadows that writhe like serpents on the walls. Elias whispers prophecies, names of the dead, secrets buried with them. The river will run red again, he murmurs, and the hills will swallow the sinners whole. By morning, the settlement buzzes with unease. Dogs howl at his approach, refusing to near him. Milk sours in the pails when he passes the barns. Children hide, claiming they see figures trailing him, shadowy forms that vanish when you blink. The adults whisper of demons, of curses brought by the war's unholy residue. Doctors are summoned from nearby Springfield, priests from the scattered missions. But nothing, neither leeches nor Latin exorcisms, touches the enigma that is Elias. What was he? A vessel for some ancient malice unearthed by the war's upheavals. A changeling slipped into the world by the fey folk of Ozark lore, or something born of human despair, a manifestation of the collective grief that soaked the soil. As we delve deeper tonight, you'll feel the chill creep up your spine, the same chill that gripped Hollow's Bend in 1866. For this is no mere ghost story. It's a riddle wrapped in terror, a mystery that bent the minds of men and left echoes that haunt the Ozarks to this day. Lean in closer, listeners. Dim your lights, for the shadows are listening too. Let me paint for you the world of Elias, where the line between boy and beast blurs, and the mountains themselves seem to conspire against the living. Feel the damp earth under your feet, the rustle of leaves that might be footsteps. Are you ready? The tale begins, and once it does, there's no turning back. The boy who terrified the Ozarks awaits, and he has secrets to share, secrets that might just follow you home. Pause for atmospheric sound, distant wolf howl, fading into eerie silence. But before we plunge into the heart of the narrative, let me set the stage with the scents and sounds of that forsaken place. The Ozarks in 1866 were a wilderness untamed, where ancient oaks twisted like arthritic fingers toward the sky and creeks murmured secrets to the stones. Fog clung to the valleys like a shroud, and at night the stars seemed dimmer, as if afraid to shine too brightly on what lurked below. The people were hardy stock, Scots, Irish descendants mostly, who fled the crowded east for these hills, bringing with them tales of fairies and witches from the old country. Superstition wasn't folly here, it was survival. Crosses nailed above doors, salt scattered on thresholds. These were the armors against the unseen. Elias shattered that fragile armor. His arrival coincided with omens, a comet streaking across the October sky, wells turning brackish overnight. The settlers, already reeling from raids and Reconstruction's harsh grip, saw him as a harbinger. The war ain't over, they'd mutter around campfires. It's just gone underground, into the boy's soul. As your host, I've pored over faded journals, whispered accounts passed down through generations. What emerges is a tapestry of dread woven with threads of the inexplicable. Tonight, we'll unravel it thread by thread, feeling the tug of something ancient and hungry. So, settle in. The shadow behind you grows longer, and remember, in the Ozarks, some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, they're meant to consume. Let us begin our descent into the story proper, listeners, with the slow unraveling of Hollow's Bend in the fall of 1866. The settlement nestled in a crook of the White River, where the water carved through limestone bluffs like a knife through flesh. Homes were humble, log structures with chinked walls, roofs of split shingles that leaked during the relentless rains. Smoke curled from stone chimneys, carrying the scent of cornbread and venison stew, mingling with the earthy tang of fallen leaves and damp soil. Reverend Harlan Thorpe's cabin stood on the outskirts, a sentinel against the wilderness. Thorpe was a towering man, his face etched with lines from years of preaching fire and brimstone to soldiers on both sides of the divide. His wife, Eliza, had perished in a raid 2 years prior, leaving him with a daughter, young Abigail, just 10, with braids like golden wheat and eyes full of innocent wonder. It was Abigail who first spotted Elias that fateful evening as she gathered firewood near the riverbank. "Papa," she called, her voice trembling like a leaf in the wind. "There's a boy by the water. He's not right." Thorpe strode out, Bible in hand, expecting a vagrant or a runaway. What he found chilled him to his marrow. The boy sat cross-legged on a mossy rock, staring into the swirling currents. His clothes were rags, tattered homespun that hung like shrouds. No shoes, no belongings. When Thorpe approached, Elias lifted his head slowly, his gaze locking onto the Reverend's with an intensity that made the air thicken. "Child," Thorpe boomed, his voice steady despite the prickling at his nape. "What's your name? Where are your kin?" Elias blinked once, twice. Then, in a voice raspy as rustling dead leaves, he replied, "Elias, the kin are gone, swallowed by the hills." Thorpe, ever the shepherd, bundled the boy inside. Eliza's absence had left a void, and perhaps he saw in Elias a chance for redemption. They fed him broth by the fire, where flames crackled and popped like gunfire echoes. Abigail watched from the corner, her doll clutched tight, as Elias ate mechanically, his eyes never leaving the shadows dancing on the walls. That night, the first signs emerged. As the family retired to their pallets, straw mattresses on the dirt floor, a low hum filled the cabin. It started subtle, like bees in a distant hive, but grew, vibrating the very timbers. Thorpe awoke, sweating despite the autumn chill, to find Elias standing at the window, silhouetted against the moon. The boy's lips moved, murmuring in a language that twisted like Thorne's Latin, perhaps, or something older, laced with guttural clicks. "What devilry is this?" Thorpe demanded, grabbing his cross. Elias turned, his eyes gleaming like coals. "The devils are in the mirrors, preacher. They watch you sleep." Abigail screamed then, pointing to the looking glass above the wash basin. In its reflection, figures shifted, not their own, but spectral forms, gaunt and accusatory, mouths open in silent wails. Thorpe smashed the glass with his fist, shards raining like brittle ice. The humming ceased, but the damage was done. Sleep fled the household that night, replaced by a watchful dread. By dawn, news rippled through Hollow's Bend. The settlement boasted perhaps 50 souls farmers like Jebediah Croft, whose fields yielded meager corn, the miller Amos Gaines, and his wife Martha, the blacksmith Silas Reed, with arms like knotted oaks. They gathered at the meeting house, a rough, hewn structure doubling as church and school. Whispering of the strange boy, his a war curse, Croft grumbled, his beard flecked with tobacco. Shen Nim in the camps. Boys touched by the reaper. Martha Gaines, still pale from her encounter, nodded. The bread rotted in my hand. Like death's touch, Thorpe defended his charge. Is but a child, lost and alone. The Lord bids us care for the least. But doubt gnawed at him that afternoon. As Elias wandered the fields under Abigail's watchful eye, calamity struck. A flock of sheep in Croft's pasture suddenly bolted, bleating in terror. One ewe collapsed, foaming at the mouth, its eyes rolling back. Elias stood nearby, unmoving, as if in trance. When Croft examined the beast, its heart had burst. No wound, no poison. The boy did it, Croft accused at the evening gathering. With his devil eyes. Elias, when questioned, smiled faintly. A smile that didn't reach his eyes. The sheep saw its end. I only showed it. Tension mounted, dogs snarled at Elias's shadow, cats arched and hissed. Children reported nightmares, dreams of a boy leading them into caves where voices echoed eternal. Abigail, once curious, now shrank from him, claiming his touch felt like ice water. Thorpe, desperate, sent for aid. First came Dr. Elias Hawthorne, no relation. A coincidence that unsettled all. From Springfield, Hawthorne arrived on horseback, his black bag brimming with vials and instruments. A man of science, schooled in Philadelphia, he dismissed the whispers as hysteria, post-war delusions. He scoffed, examining the boy in the cabin's dim light. Elias sat still as stone, pulse steady, eyes clear. But as Hawthorne listened to his chest with a stethoscope, the instrument grew hot, burning his ear. He yelped, dropping it, to find the metal warped like taffy. "Trickery!" he exclaimed, but his voice wavered. Then Elias spoke. "Your wife weeps for the child you lost, Doctor." In the fever of 63, Hawthorne paled. It was true, a secret buried deep. "Oh, the dead tell me," Elias replied, his voice a whisper that filled the room. Hawthorne fled that night, muttering of hypnosis or madness. But the terror escalated. One evening, as the settlement dined communally, potluck stew under the stars, a storm brewed unnatural. Clouds boiled from clear skies, lightning cracking like whips. Elias stood apart, arms raised, and the bolts danced around him, illuminating his form in ghastly blue. "The mountains speak through me," he intoned as rain pelted like stones. Panic seeded. Families barred doors, nailed horseshoes for luck. Thorpe, torn between faith and fear, turned to prayer. But in the dead of night, Elias would rise, walking the woods barefoot, returning with hands stained red, not blood but berry juice that looked eerily like it. Animals vanished, chickens, hogs, found later with throats torn as if by beasts. Abigail confided in her father. "He talks to shadows, Papa. Says they're his family." Thorpe's resolve cracked. He wrote to the bishop in St. Louis, begging for an exorcist. Meanwhile, the boy grew bolder, predicting mishaps, a barn fire that claimed Gaines's mill, a flood that washed away bridges. Each fulfilled, each deepening the dread. As winter's chill crept in, frost-etching patterns like skeletal fingers on windows, the community fractured. Some called for banishment, others for mercy. But Elias remained an enigma, his origins a void. Whispers grew of him being born of the war, perhaps the son of a bushwhacker, cursed by dying breaths. Listeners feel the weight of that isolation, the creeping paranoia. The Ozarks, with their endless folds of hill and holler, amplified every rustle, every unexplained cry. Elias wasn't violent, not overtly, but his presence warped reality, bending the natural order like a willow in wind. The stage was set for deeper horrors as priest and doctor converged, only to find the mystery insoluble. As the leaves turned to skeletal remnants and the winds howled like lost souls through the hollows, the terror in Hollow's Bend deepened. Listeners, Elias, the boy who emerged from nowhere, became a living shadow, his every movement watched with bated breath. Reverend Thorpe's cabin, once a beacon of faith, now felt like a cage for something untamed. The conflicts ignited with the arrival of Father Ignatius Blackwood, the exorcist summoned from St. Louis. Blackwood was a gaunt figure, clad in black cassock, his face a map of scars from prior battles with the infernal. He carried a valise of holy relics, crucifixes forged in Rome, vials of blessed water from the Jordan. Arriving on a mule under a slate, grey sky, he surveyed the settlement with piercing eyes. This boy, he declared at the meeting house, may be oppressed by a legion. I've seen such in the war, souls fractured, inviting darkness. Thorpe nodded warily, Abigail clinging to his side. Elias waited in the cabin, seated by the fire, flames reflecting in his unblinking gaze. The exorcism began at midnight, the witching hour when veils thin. Villagers gathered outside, lanterns flickering like will-o'-the-wisps. Inside, Blackwood circled Elias, chanting in Latin, Exorcisamus te, omnis emendus spiritus. Elias laughed, a sound like cracking ice. Your words are dust, priest. The old ones laugh at them. The room grew cold, breath pluming. Objects levitated, a Bible spun in air, pages riffling as if read by invisible hands. Blackwood splashed holy water. It boiled on Elias's skin, raising no blister but steaming like fog. "Tell me your name, demon!" Blackwood commanded. Elias's voice shifted, multiplying into echoes. We are many. We are the forgotten, the slain in these hills. Bushwhackers and innocents, bound by blood. Visions assailed those present. Thorpe saw his wife's death anew, raiders torching their home, her screams eternal. Abigail wept. Claiming hands clutched at her from the floorboards. The rite lasted hours. Elias convulsed, spitting bile that scorched the floor. But as dawn broke, he slumped, seemingly purged. Blackwood, exhausted, declared victory. The entity flees. Joy was short-lived. That day, Croft's son fell into the river, drowning despite clear weather. Elias, when accused, whispered, "He saw too much in my eyes." Doubt festered. Doctor Hawthorne returned, bolstered by a colleague, Dr. Miriam Voss, a rare female physician specializing in hysteria. They posited Elias suffered war-induced mesmerism, a psychological affliction. We'll use electricity, Voss explained, unveiling a galvanic battery, wires and jars humming with current. Strapped to a chair, Elias endured shocks that made his body arch. But instead of cries, he sang an eerie melody in unknown tongue. The machine malfunctioned, sparks flying, igniting curtains. In the chaos, Elias freed himself, eyes glowing. Your science is blind to the depths. Voss fled, burned and shaken. Hawthorne stayed, delving into hypnosis. Under trance, Elias spoke of origins, born of the earth, in a cave where the war's dead whisper. No mother, no father, only the mountain's womb. Haunting events multiplied. Nights brought apparitions, ghostly figures marching through fields, spectral soldiers reliving battles. Elias led them, a Pied Piper of the damned. Animals mutated, cows birthing calves with extra eyes, hens laying eggs filled with blood. Silas Reed, the blacksmith, confronted Elias alone. What are you, boy? Elias touched Reed's forge. The iron twisted into shapes of screaming faces. Reed swung his hammer, but it halted mid-air, turning back on him, fracturing his arm. The community splintered. Some, like Martha Gaines, fled to kin in Missouri. Others formed vigilantes, torches ready. Thorpe protected Elias, seeing a test of faith. Abigail, however, bonded oddly. Elias taught her forgotten lore, herbs that healed or harmed. Climax brewed in December, snow blanketing the hills like a funeral pall. Elias vanished into the woods, returning with gifts, bones etched with runes, predicting deaths. When Gaines died of apoplexy, his face contorted in eternal scream, fingers pointed blame. Blackwood returned, armed with relics. A second exorcism ensued, villagers chanting outside. Elias resisted, winds howling, trees bending. He revealed truths, adulteries, murders hidden in war's fog. Secrets tore families. Croft confessed killing a neighbor for land. In frenzy, Elias levitated, body twisting unnaturally. "The mystery is me?" he roared. "Neither priest nor doctor can solve what the mountains birth." The rite failed. Blackwood collapsed, heart failing. Elias vanished that night, footprints leading to a cave, then nothing. Searches yielded echoes, whispers calling names. Hollow's Bend never recovered. Families dispersed, the settlement a ghost town by 1870. Elias's legend lingered. Sightings reported a boy in mists, eyes gleaming, terrifying wanderers. Listeners, the tale's heart beats with unresolved dread. What was Elias? The narrative closes, but echoes remain. To fully grasp the chill of Elias's tale, listeners, we must burrow into the soil of history itself. The real, tangible past that birthed such legends in the Ozarks. The year 1866 was no arbitrary backdrop. It was a cauldron of chaos, where the Civil War's embers still smoldered, igniting fears that manifested as folklore and superstition. Let us explore this eerie authenticity, blending fact with the fog of folklore, to see how a mystery like Elias could thrive in such fertile ground. The Ozarks, that rugged expanse spanning Missouri, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Kansas, were a hinterland even before the war. Settled in the early 19th century by migrants from the Oakland South, primarily Scots-Irish from Appalachia, these hills were a refuge for those seeking isolation. The terrain was unforgiving: steep bluffs, dense forests of oak and hickory, karst caves riddling the earth like hidden veins. By the 1850s, communities like Hollow's Bend dotted the landscape, sustained by subsistence farming, milling, and trade along rivers like the White. But the Civil War shattered this fragile idyll. Missouri and Arkansas were border states, torn by divided loyalties. Bushwhacking, guerrilla warfare by irregulars, ravaged the Ozarks. Bands like Quatrails raiders terrorized civilians, burning homes, executing suspected sympathizers. In Ozark County, Missouri, for instance, Confederate posts encircled the area, but Union forces pushed through, leaving a trail of destruction. Post-surrender in 1865, lawlessness persisted. Discharged soldiers returned to find farms ruined, families scattered. Vigilante justice reigned, with bald nobbers, masked enforcers, emerging later. But in 1866, it was pure anarchy. Economic devastation compounded the trauma. Arkansas's boom in the 1850s, cotton, timber, collapsed under war's weight. Reconstruction brought federal troops, but in remote hollows, aid was scarce. Famine loomed. Diseases like cholera spread in crowded camps. Orphans wandered, much like Elias, products of massacre and displacement. This chaos bred superstition. Ozark folklore, rich and ancient, amplified in crisis. Vance Randolph, the great collector of Ozark tales in the early 20th century, documented beliefs in witches, ghosts, and possessions that echoed European roots. Granny women, folk healers using herbs and charms, were commonplace, blending midwifery with magic. Water witches doused for wells with forked sticks, yarb doctors cured with plants like sassafras. Ghost stories abounded. Apparitions of slain soldiers, haints, trailing mules at dusk. Witchcraft tales featured shifters, like the booger dog, a witch in animal form. Randolph's Ozark Magic and Folklore's 1947 details power doctors, combating hexes with Bible verses and silver bullets. In the 19th century, accusations of witchcraft weren't rare. Trials, though not Salem scale, occurred. One 1859 case in Arkansas involved a witch, blamed for hauntings, mirroring Elias's unsolved mystery. Legends of mysterious beings peppered the era. The Blue Man, sighted since the 1860s in Douglas County, Missouri, was a wild azure-hued creature roaming woods, perhaps a feral war survivor, but folklore painted it as supernatural. The Ozark Howler, a cryptid with glowing eyes and piercing cry, haunted remote areas. Spook lights, ethereal orbs dancing in hollows, were attributed to ghosts of the unrested dead. Caves played a central role. The Ozarks karst topology hides thousands, like Marvel Cave, used as hideouts during war. Folklore spoke of bluff dwellers, mythical ancient peoples, though archaeology debunked it. Caves were portals to the underworld, birthing tales of lost children emerging changed, possessed by earth spirits. Religion intertwined with this circuit. Riding preachers like Thorpe brought Methodism and baptism, but folk beliefs persisted. Exorcisms weren't uncommon. Priests battled demons, of epilepsy or madness. Doctors, scarce and rudimentary, relied on bleeding and laudanum, dismissing possessions as hysteria. In 1866, this war trauma isolation superstition created perfect conditions for a figure like Elias. Real events echo orphan bands roamed, some exhibiting wild child behaviors from trauma. Psychological afflictions, now PTSD, manifested as speaking in tongues or visions. Unexplained deaths, disease, accidents were blamed on curses, blend in cultural trauma. Native American displacement, the Osage and Cherokee forced out, left cursed lands. Settlers whispered of Indian spirits' revenge. Post-war, African American freedmen in the Ozarks faced lynchings, adding layers of racial hauntings. Eerily similar unsolved mysteries. History. In 1868, near Springfield, a possessed girl levitated, baffling clergy. Folklore collections note witch boys, predicting calamities. This context lends unsettling authenticity to our tale. Elias embodies the era's fears, the unknown orphan as war's remnant, defying science and faith. The Ozarks, with their timeless isolation, preserve these echoes. Even today, hikers report whispers in caves, shadows that follow. As we peel these layers, the chill deepens. History isn't dry facts, it's alive, breathing dread into legends. Elias's mystery, rooted in this soil, feels all too real, a shadow cast by forgotten pains. Now, listeners, let us venture beyond the surface narrative into the abyssal depths of meaning. The story of Elias isn't merely a chilling yarn. It's a mirror reflecting universal fears, cultural wounds, and the shadowy facets of human nature. With an ominous lens, we'll dissect its symbols, psychology, and connections, uncovering how this Ozark enigma haunts our collective psyche. Symbolically, Elias represents the author, the intruder who disrupts order. In post-war Ozarks, he embodies chaos's residue, war orphans as reminders of loss, their strangeness amplifying survivor guilt. His emergence from woods symbolizes nature's reclaiming. Mountains, birthing, an avenger for human intrusions. Caves, his alleged origin, evoke Plato's allegory, shadows as illusions, but here they manifest truth, terrifying the unenlightened. His eyes, obsidian voids, symbolize the abyss gazing back, per Nietzsche. They pull secrets, forcing confrontations with buried sins, adulteries, murders. This mirrors confessional aspects of folklore where witches expose hypocrisies. Psychologically, Elias incarnates trauma's manifestations. Post-Civil War, many suffered soldier's heart, PTSD precursors, dissociation, hallucinations, prophetic delusions. Elias could be a feral child, warped by isolation. Freudian views see him as an unleashed, primal urges defying superego, faith, science. Jungian archetypes fit, the shadow self, collective unconscious erupting in crisis. Possessions as projections of societal fears, war's violence internalized, expelled onto the boy. Thematically, it connects to universal dread of the unknown. Neither priestly faith nor doctorly reason solves him, highlighting Enlightenment's limits. In 1866, science burgeoned, but folklore persisted, clashing realms. Elias mocks both holy water boils, machines fail. This echoes Gothic literature, Frankenstein's hubris, pose uncanny, where rational fails against irrational. Cultural trauma looms large. The Ozarks, microcosm of America's divides, bore war's brunt. Elias's legion, of the dead voices the unburied, bushwhacker victims, slaves, natives. His prophecies revive suppressed histories, a haunting reckoning. In folklore, such figures enforce moral order, punishing sins. Human nature's dark side emerges, communities' fear turns to mob frenzy, echoing witch hunts. Thorpe's charity crumbles under doubt, Blackwood's faith falters. This probes empathy's fragility, how quickly excludes them. Broader connections, parallels to global myths, changeling lore from Ireland. Fey children swapped, mirrors Elias's otherworldliness. Possession tales in voodoo or shamanism see spirits as messengers. In American context, akin to Salem trials or modern satanic panic, fear of the child as vessel for evil. Intellectually, it questions reality's nature. Was Elias supernatural or mass hysteria? Folly deplusias where shared delusion spread. War's stress could induce this, amplified by isolation. Ominously, it ties to existential fears, impermanence, insignificance. Mountains swallow sinners. Nature's indifference dwarfs humanity. Elias, unsolved, leaves void, mirroring life's mysteries, death, suffering. In our era, it resonates with pandemics, conflicts, orphans of crises, unexplained phenomena. Elias warns, ignore shadows at peril, they return hungrier. This exploration leaves us haunted, pondering our own enigmas. The boy's terror isn't past, it's eternal, lurking in humanity's depths. As our journey through the shadowed Ozarks draws to its close, listeners, let the weight of Elias's enigma settle upon you like mist in a hollow. We've traversed the narrative's twisting paths, delved into history's murky depths, and probed the psyche's abyssal corners. Yet the mystery remains, a void neither priest nor doctor could fill, echoing through time like a whisper in the wind. Recall the boy emerging from wilderness, eyes like endless nights, voice carrying the dead's laments. He terrified not with claws or fangs, but with presence, a mirror forcing hollow's bend to confront its fractures. Prophecies fulfilled, shadows stirred, lives unraveled. In 1866, amid war's ashes, Elias was the spark that ignited primal fears, leaving a settlement in ruins and a legend indelible. What became of him? Searches yielded nothing but echoes in caves, whispers calling seekers deeper. Sightings persisted, a spectral boy on ridges, luring wanderers to doom. By the 20th century, folklore wove him into Ozark tapestry, warning to children, tale around fires. Even now, in remote hollows, elders speak of the mountain's child, eyes gleaming in dark. This tale haunts because it's unresolved, no exorcism banished, no diagnosis cured. Elias defies categorization, demon, delusion, or something liminal. Perhaps he was the Ozark's incarnate, ancient, unforgiving, birthing mysteries from its bowels. Lingering question, what if Elias waits still? In our modern world, amid crises echoing 1866, do such figures emerge? Orphans of wars, children touched by unseen forces. Do they carry the same dread? Listen to the wind next time you're alone. Does it murmur your secrets? Dear listeners, as the shadow behind you fades, remember, shadows aren't empty. They hold what we fear to see. Turn off your light, feel the chill. Elias's eyes might watch from the dark. Until next time, beware the boy in the mountains. He knows your name.